Hi guys, I hope you're keeping well. Dylan here from Existential Delight. I recently had a really great conversation with James Curtides. You should really go and check out his channel. He's got some really interesting content he's putting out. And we spoke for almost 2 hours about a lot of different topics. That interview will probably be up in this week. I just need to finish editing the conversation, adding, images where we mention things and just tidying up the audio a bit. During that conversation, we talked a little bit about the logos within working environments, within the professional landscape. And I've been thinking about it a lot since our conversation. So I want to just present to you guys a short little, I want to give you guys this little video in which I'm just going to elaborate a little bit on the symbolism of organizations and corporations. Now, on the screen, you'll see a slideshow that we're going to be working through. I just put this together quickly, just as a kind of guide for me as well while I'm talking about this topic. So let's jump straight into it. Beginning with the point here, or the title, the symbolism of corporations and organizations, I want to give you first just a little overview about what I'm going to talk about. So I'm first just going to give you a little bit of an introduction. I'll talk about my background so that you know why I'm saying the things I say and why I believe the things I believe. So my statements have a little bit more context. I'm then going to talk about what a company actually is and what the role of communication is within a company. And then I'm going to switch to the moral dimension of communication within the company and the consequences of that, both good and bad. I'll then talk about the symbolism of the body and how it overlays onto the hierarchy of a corporation or a business. And then I'm going to talk about the principal factor affecting communication within companies, which will be the logos. So let's go through these points one by one, starting with the introduction. So just a little bit about myself. This YouTube channel and the work that I do online is really a side project for me. It's something that I love. I love to do it, but it's not my main job. My main job is actually in corporate training. I've been in corporate training for over 5 years. I have well over 1,000 hours of in-class teaching experience, and I've worked with employees from really every background. I've worked with employees from really pretty much every background, every level of a company's hierarchy. And I normally do on-site consulting training where I'll visit a company, I'll spend time at the company, I'll get to know the staff, and then I'll cater courses to what they need. So I'll give often the salespeople sales training, I'll give the general staff customer service, I'll talk to the managers about management and leadership. And in that time, doing this for so long, I've built up a lot of practical experience, and I've seen with my own eyes what works at companies and what doesn't. And this is just, through hundreds of conversations with various people throughout the years. And I want to just start off by clarifying what I think is the most important element in a company's culture, and just in general, the most important element within a company itself. And so we're going to talk here about communication, which is easily the most important part of a company's success and a company's health. What's interesting about communication is you can't even really present an argument against it without supporting its importance. Because any argument somebody devises against communication, they have to communicate in order to explain their point of view, right? So even if I ask you, do you think communication is important? And you say no, well, you've just communicated to make your point, right? And if you still think communication is not important, I'll refer you to a marriage counselor. So basically, a company is relationships, and it's through the relationships and the way people relate to each other that certain tasks, objectives are completed. And it's really important to realize that the way relationships play out within a company really shape the company. It shapes the culture. If everyone at a company just decided not to go in the next day, you wouldn't really have a company. You'd basically just have a empty building. The company might exist on paper for now, but really the reality of the company is given to it by the people operating within its structure and the decisions they make and the way they handle each other. So having said that, let's look at point number 3, which brings up the moral dimension. And I want to start off by just clarifying the difference between a team and a crowd. If you go to a shopping mall and you look around you and you see lots of various people, the only thing that really unites them is that they're probably at the mall to get something, to consume something, maybe food, or to purchase something. But you wouldn't really describe that crowd of people as a team, right? Because a team has a core uniting function. They have something, some goal that they're working towards to accomplish. And if you think of a sports game, if you think of all the fans in the crowd, I mean, they might not know each other, and they're not going to know many people around them, and yet they'll all wear the same uniform. They'll all sing the same songs. They will all chant together. They'll celebrate together, and it's the fact that they have a uniting goal or a common focus, which is, their team and their team achieving victory. That's really what unites them. And this is why it's so important for managers to have a clear understanding of the company's vision, the company's long-term goal and what it hopes to accomplish, because that needs to be communicated to staff on every level, because that's really what creates the team. And if you're managing a group of people and they feel disjointed and it feels like the unity of the team is not there, really the place you want to begin is by clarifying the goal. Because again, that's what separates the team from just a crowd of people, from just a group of people. Now, on the slide, you'll see it says the core moral act which regulates all relationships is honesty. And what's very interesting is, this is very practical. If I get to work and I don't know if people are being honest with me, things are just not going to run. You simply can't work with people if you're not telling each other the truth. If a manager asks an employee, have you completed this task, or how far are you with this task, and they say yes, or they grossly overestimate how far they are, and they effectively lie, it's going to affect the way the manager perceives his or her team. It's going to affect the way that the workflow is going to unfold, and it really denies the manager access to reality, which is what a lie is, right? It's sort of restricting someone from knowing what's really going on. So I just call this the Truman effect, or the Truman-Bankman effect. So think of the Truman Show, where Truman, the main character, his whole life is a lie. Effectively, he's been completely cut off from reality through lies, and we can do this to each other, right? When I lie to someone, when someone lies to me, there's a restriction I'm placing upon them where they no longer know what's actually going on. The narrative in their mind doesn't actually map onto reality, and they don't realize it, which is why it's so dangerous. Then one of the consequences of a lack of honesty within teams, you see it all the time, is once people start lying to each other enough within the team, the next thing that goes is trust, because you simply can't trust people if you realize they're lying to you, or even if they're being slightly deceitful. The trust very quickly goes out of the window. And once you have a group of people that don't trust each other, you have communication increasing, but it's a kind of inverse communication. It's gossip, right? So you have reputation destruction. You have people communicating about each other instead of to each other, and doing it in a very negative way, in a very negative sense. So it's this domino effect where once honesty is gone, trust leaves next, and then of course gossip increases. And like I say, you see it all the time in groups of people, you see it all the time in companies. This is why I say communication is really the most it's really the core value, or the core moral that needs to be in place at the company's bedrock of values. And it's very practical, right? I think I say in the interview with James, it's as practical as potatoes. I simply can't work in an environment where I don't know if what is really happening within the team matches reality. So that's point number 3. Let's move on to point number 4, which is the body. And I think this is where things really get interesting, and this is where we're going to talk more about the symbolism. So if you think about an organization, every company is in a sense an organization, because all of the company's actions and decisions and policies and procedures are circling around and leading towards and pointing towards a central goal or vision. So everything's organized around that central goal. But the word organization actually comes from the Greek word organon, which can mean instrument or tool or organ. And if you think about the human body, you have various organs within your body doing really radically, in a way, very radically different things, right? The brain is doing a very different thing to the heart. And yet, if all these organs work in unison and they all do their individual jobs, it leads to a healthy body. So you can think of a company as, you've got the organization, you've got the organs, the various departments, you've got the HR department, the finance department, etc., etc. And these various organs working together result in a healthier body. They result in a healthier company. Now, the organs are made up by individual people. The departments are made up by individual people who are regulating the way they interact within the department through communication. And there again, we see that honesty entering the sphere. We see that moral dimension entering, and you really just can't escape it. Now, what's really interesting, if we continue with this idea of the body, is that the word corporation itself comes from the Latin corporare, which means to combine in one body. Think of the word corpse, for example. So you have a macrocosm, you have a larger body made up of various organs, which is the company, and that's made up of smaller individual bodies, individual people, employees. So you have the macrocosm reflected in the microcosm, you have the body of the company reflected in the body of the individuals, and you have the microcosm reflected in the macrocosm. You have the individual employee bodies reflected by the company's larger body. And you literally have to embody a company's values, policies, procedures. There's certain behaviors you're going to have to act out within the company. And so there's really this sense of taking the company into your body and exercising that and applying it to the world around you. So that word embody is really perfect. What's really interesting, and this is something that James pointed out to me during our conversation, he also said, well, you've also got kind of the elements of heaven and earth within a company. Because it's a hierarchy, it's not a coincidence that usually the CEO or the board of directors, they're going to be sitting very high up in the building, right? The top offices. It again resembles a body, because you've got the core main decisions being made at the top of the body. So you can think of that as like the brain, the psyche, which you can think of the soul, you can think of heaven symbolically, and those decisions move down the body and affect every level. And that's very much like the brain sending messages down to the rest of the body. So you've got the kind of heavenly element, and then you've got the earthly element at the bottom. And these two are working in conjunction, because of course staff on lower levels are also going to make decisions that will affect the higher levels. So you've got the body communicating with the mind communicating with the body. Now, let's bring in the logos in this discussion. So the question to consider is, why does truth regulate the flow of information so well? Well, obviously I've listed the problems, but if you consider the benefits, it's in a way the opposite. So if employees are being truthful, it creates a more pleasant environment to be in. The work you get, the feedback you get, the work you do and the feedback you get for that work is going to be much more reliable. Obviously, there's still human error, right? Somebody can tell you something sincerely and really believe it and think it's true and be mistaken. That happens too, right? So there's always going to be human error. But generally speaking, if people are trying to tell the truth within a working environment and they're embodying the logos, the word, that implicit order and meaning within the world, and they're doing that by aligning themselves with the truth and actually speaking it, there's going to be a lot more honesty, which is going to lead to an increased level of trust and then a lower level of gossip. Now, gossip will always be there. If you have gossip in your team as a manager, that doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad manager. It just means you're managing people, right? And the regulating truth within the team and really trying to encourage people to speak honestly is going to lead to increased trust, and it is going to lead to less gossip, which is going to lead to a more cohesive team that's actually going to be more geared and ready to try and attain the goal of the organization. And the organ itself of that team is going to be functioning much more healthily. You can think healthily, they're going to be functioning with much more health. And so that department plays a much more vital role in the larger scheme of the body of the company. Now, the truth describes reality because it is reality. It's the most accurate description of reality. And so because I have an accurate description of reality and I can see that because my actions and the decisions I make are based on feedback I've gotten from those around me, if they're being truthful, then the decisions I make should reflect well. Now, I can still make mistakes and I might make a decision everybody agrees with that might go wrong. But generally speaking, if you're getting real feedback and you make your decisions based on honest truth, the benefits of that and the way things are going to play out is going to be a better situation for you than if you took the alternative route, which would be, deception and deceit and lies. Okay, so let's add on to this logos a little bit more. So the logos is what gives structure, form, and direction to everything, especially speech. And in a way, speech describes the world, and we categorize the world through speech. So that system of using speech to talk about reality and to talk about the world, you're organizing reality by discussing it. It's in a way what somebody does when they go to a psychologist, right? They organize their thinking by talking about the situation. You might have heard of the rubber duck effect, where programmers will have a little rubber duck on their desk. A friend of mine who's a programmer told me this, and he said that, if you get stuck with a problem, it sounds a little bit crazy, but you'll actually explain the problem to the rubber duck. And it's in the process of explaining the problem that you actually come to a solution. This is also why it's so useful to listen to people when they're speaking and really allow them to unpack the problem, because oftentimes they sort of implicitly know the solution, but they don't know what they think until they hear what they say. So giving that person the opportunity to speak and just allowing that person to explain how they see the situation can often lead to them finding the result for themselves. Now, without the logos, we operate in a false reality. But if it is present, that company, if the company culture is regulated by truth, by logos at its core, that's going to set up the company for much more success. Now, companies can still fail. I mean, if the product or the service is no longer something that the market wants, if the company can't deliver the scale that it's required to deliver, these can obviously affect the company's growth. But assuming that those areas are being handled reasonably well, the company culture is going to have a huge impact on the success of the company. And if it is founded on truth, just like, when somebody says at the core of your marriage, you should put Christ, right? At the core of your marriage, you should put truth. If that truth is regulating the relationships as it does in the relationship of a marriage, generally that's going to set up those relationships and as a consequence, the body of the company for a much better outcome. So, and that company can be so successful that it actually outlives people. That spirit of logos is actually present as people leave and more people join. Eventually, the people working at that company might be a completely different group from the original group. But if that spirit is still present there, if people are still speaking truthfully, well, that company is just going to last a lot longer. And that's why it shouldn't surprise us. And this is the final point. That's why it shouldn't surprise us that the church, which is literally the body of Christ, where the logos resides, I mean, it goes from one generation to the next. It continues to stick around. And it's a perpetually defeated thing that always outlives its conquerors, as Hilaire Belloc said. So the church is everlasting and it's ever new, even though the members of the church, at least here on earth, they keep coming and going. The church sticks around, and it's, the world's growing old, but the church is ever new. The church is really the most fresh thing you can find. It's the most new thing you can find, even though it's one of the oldest. So just a few thoughts I wanted to share with you guys. So to conclude this, I talked briefly a little bit about my background, why I'm making these statements and why I believe them to be true. I then elaborated on what a company is and the role of communication within a company and how relationships really are the company. I then mentioned the moral dimension and its consequences. Lack of honesty leads to lack of trust, which leads to increased gossip and a wealth of other problems I haven't mentioned. And then, of course, the body, the symbolism of the company as a body and the way we structure ourselves within hierarchies that actually reflect that body, and even use words like corporation, which means body, and organization, which means organs, such as within a body. And then I talked about how the regulating principle that keeps the body healthy is the logos, is truth itself. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, if you like this video, thank you so much for watching it. If you think this channel should be bigger, if you want to support the content I'm making, if you like this kind of stuff, please consider subscribing. Please give the video a like. And of course, I'm very open to, I am thinking through this, right? So I'm going to update these ideas and change them and shape them as much as I can. But I'd love your feedback. So what do you think? What did I miss? Let me know in the comment section below. I do actually read the comments. It's a bit of a problem, actually. I tend to be checking them probably more than I should. But I definitely will see your comment if you leave one below. Compliments, criticisms, complaints, they're all welcome. Now, you can find more of my work on my website, existentialdelight.click. It's pretty bare bones at the moment. I just started it, but you can find links there to pretty much all my social areas. And then, of course, there's the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@existentialdelight. The interview with James will be coming out this week. I'm excited for you guys to see it. There's a lot of interesting things we talk about. Really, probably my favorite conversation I've had for the channel. Really excited to share that with you. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I see we've been going for about, let's see here, for quite some time, about 20 minutes. I thought this was going to be like a 5-minute video. But anyway, there you go. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think. God bless you. God bless your family. And I'm wishing you a wonderful day, night, wherever you are. I'm Dylan. This is Existential Delight, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.